I like the Oh Sherry. Journey has always been my favorite band. They wrote that for me. They just don't know it. So how's it been this morning? You guys jazzed up? You ready? You know, I tell you about the fun that we have doing this. And I think you heard from Anisha and Shauna and Phyllis how much fun it is to open an envelope and there's a check in it. You don't know how it came. To be meeting and get a call from the State of New Mexico Department of Transportation Director to get an email that says, yeah, we want you to present about your nonprofit. Well, also what you're doing attracts people with influence, celebrities, football. As Matt was talking, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to be sitting down with Peyton Manning, and we're going to be developing a whole fund for all of your nonprofits, okay? So I just want to put that out there, okay? And Vinny, the photographer here, is a personal photographer for Dick Clark, for you showed me several folks, and the NFL. So I put that out to him because he photographed Peyton during the Super Bowl, okay? So put your intentions out there. It's been the most magnificent time together. There's so many people that I want to thank. I've said thank you, thank you, thank you so much. One of the folks I want to just real fast bring up, and I don't know if we have microphones because this is off cue here. So Janie and Tony, would you walk by and get a microphone? Last night at the reception, there was a lot of connecting going on, a lot of conversations happening. So I don't know how many of you heard, but I wanted to share the connecting that leads us into the next piece on the Show Me the Money Day. We learned about charitable giving of real estate. What did you think about that? Do you see an opportunity there? It's very important for the Power Purpose team to walk the walk. So we're out connecting daily. And I'm so blessed to be with a team and a board of directors that have really taken our different strengths and placed us in positions to allow us to just go. And so to step down as the CEO, because I was more in the way. These young things are getting us out to the masses, and they have a whole different strategy. Bringing Aaron in as the chief executive officer, having Derek lead the real estate, having Ryan lead the mentoring, having Ed doing the big projects, and then having a board led with Mr. Mike Assam, bringing me in as chief inspirational officer, allowing me to go out and connect so I can bring those resources to you. And one of the real grateful things I'm proud of connecting is with Janie and Tony. They have humanitarian radio, and when we connected, the first thing they just said, we want you on our show next week. Then they brought Derek and I on their show to talk about charitable giving of real estate and how nonprofits that are already existing can explode to make their mission bigger. Last night at the reception, to be honored with the Humanitarian of the Year Award for Humanitarian Radio was a blessing. And as you connect to meet the most beautiful people and what they're doing in the world, to bring it together, to collaborate. When I first talked to Tony, what impressed me and what lit my heart up was Not that they played for President Obama's inaugural, that's cool. Not that he has all kinds of CDs, that's cool. Not that they have humanitarian radio, all that's cool. What lit me up was when Tony said, you know, I chose not to go the direction in Hollywood with my music. I wanted music that made a difference in people's lives. And when I get on fire is when I go tours with the troops. He's been on many tours with our troops. And when he goes to prisons and gives people hope. And when he goes to nursing homes. And so you know what I said? We need a nonprofit, right? So he can do that more. That's what lights him up. And so together, we started Spirit of Music Foundation. Well, during this journey of us both contributing, then Janie comes in and says, you know, I have all kinds of products and services, been doing it 25 years, red carpet events, you know, the whole bit. I can help you in that area. Well, we can go out and help the nonprofits. Because one of the revenue streams Ed will be bringing in is developing products and services. There's a great nonprofit in LA that serves people coming out of prison. Because talk about a system that's broken. Talk about incarcerating people forever and then send them out at 2 in the morning with $5 and saying, good luck. And we wonder why recidivism is 80%. There's no supports. And so going through that whole journey and having Janie say, I can help you. This nonprofit in LA, they make tortilla chips, and their label says jobs, not jails. And they're producing tons of revenue to support and bring families back together and reunite the men with their children mainly. So when Janie said that, it just kept growing, the beauty that they bring. And as a graphic artist, Tony is, look at these 2 banners. They produced and made the banners. So we asked you, who all said thank you? Dave Metzel said, I want us to make sure that we're walking the walk and being the example. And I just want to thank you guys for what you brought to us.
Thank you.
Taking your nonprofit and making it happen. The mentoring, Tony, every step of the way. In fact, he was like way ahead of me going, okay, what next? What next? What next? And to invite us to a red carpet event in December and have us be the stars. I mean, we thought we were going to be at the red carpet to support everyone. They had us be the main speaker. They had the TV stations interviewing us on the red carpet. And, of course, Briley had to be the star, right? But it's amazing when you connect and when you give, it comes back 10 times more. So I just wanted to say thank you for what you've done, both of you. Thank you for helping us bring our message out. And thank you for your offer to all the students that come in with us. They're bringing them on humanitarian radio.
If you look at your tables, there are some cards available. So there's a humanitarian radio card. There's another ST Productions. That is the graphic design company. Then obviously there's this card here, which is the nonprofit. This is just an example, though, of what we can do for you. And Sherry, I want to thank you so much just for inspiring me to do this, because this is work that I was already passionate about, that I was already doing for a number of years. And the one thing I said to Sherry before we got online when we were going to have our interview, I said, you know, I wish I could do more, but having guys take days off of work to go play at a jail, I said, it just doesn't add up for them, you know? And I says, and those are the shows that are the most rewarding for us as musicians, because it's a win-win situation. We're giving our passion, and yet we're receiving it back. So if we're at a jail, or at a military base or an elderly home, it blows away any rock concert. I mean, I could tell you right now, some of the best shows, and I've been performing for 30 years, and I've probably done over 5,000 shows. Some of the best shows have been in the LA County Jail. And I know it sounds crazy, but the amount of energy that we received, you would have thought we were the Beatles at Shea Stadium. I mean,
Felt that way.
honestly, it really did feel that way. And I gotta tell you, when we first got there, this is for the ladies' jail. There's probably about 200 women, and they were just very excited and just started screaming and stuff. The band started playing, and I had such an overwhelming feeling of love that I couldn't sing. I literally stepped back, and I looked at the band. I'm going, okay, hold on. And I just had to take it in. It just took a minute to have that much appreciation and to have women and men find me outside of jail and say, I remember you. You came in when I was playing. So that's what it means for me, and that's why I really thank you for allowing me to start an organization where I can actually do more and do more shows like that.
And
thank
look
you.
up Tony St. Tone. His music is, some of the songs are on his website. Listen to the words, the power. And I also wanted Janie, when we talk about persistence, because in life there's ups and downs. You're a nonprofit, there's going to be ups and downs. The persistence to really excel in the mission and what you're about today. Tell us a little bit about the persistence you did.
When I turned 45, I decided I wanted to get out of the corporate world. I'd been working with Fortune 500 companies for 20 years, and I wanted to start music because that's what my childhood passion was. So I joined the rock band of a bunch of guys. They had never had a girl in the band before. So I'm thinking, okay, somehow I'm going to have to prove myself to these boys to be accepted and let the chick come into the band, right? Well, at that time was when the presidential hoo-ha was going on, and they had just elected Barack Obama, and he was going to be going into the White House, and I'm thinking, wouldn't that be cool if I could get us a gig at the inaugural ball? So I mention it to my fellow boy band guys here, and they're all like, yeah, right, Jane, sure. You go ahead and do that. Okay, we'll call it that. So I decided at that point that I really needed to prove that I was going to be worth something to the band and that they should have a girl in the band. And so I started to look on the internet. Wow, I wonder if we really could actually play at the inaugural ball. There was no information whatsoever on how to book anything. None whatsoever. The only one thing that I found was the guy who was hired as the parking attendant for the inaugural ball. So I thought, well, I'm going to call him. So I did. I called this guy. A 17-year-old boy answered. It was the son, and he says, I said, who hired you? And he says, well, I don't know. Some concierge company hired my dad. Well, who's that? I went back 256 phone calls I made in 2 weeks' time, and in the third week, I ended up with Hillary Clinton's cell phone number, and we had the gig. Persistence pays off. And let me just say, I got no more guff from the boys in the band. But I want to tell you that, you know, I had probably 200-300 people, family, friends, everybody I know saying, you're wasting your time. This is never going to happen. There's no way they're ever going to pick you guys. Nobody knows you guys. And every band that played was a famous name band, except for ours. We were the band that made it in, and we made it in because of the positive music that we played. So it was well worth the effort and the frustration of 256 calls. And I got 255 no's, mind you, and still kept going and still kept going and going, I'm going to go. This is what you guys need to do. If you're serious about what you want to do in anything in your life, grab onto it, go for it. You have nothing at all to lose by trying. And that's my spiel.
So thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Love you, sweetheart. I love you too. Don't get enough of those.
I know it, me neither. Woo! So thank you, right? So you have Tony St. Tone up there. His music is incredible. And now all of your nonprofits to be doing an interview on humanitarian radio. 60,000 listeners, I don't know how many countries, we're all over the world. So as we connect, we'll be bringing these resources to you. Because when you connect, that's where the funding starts happening. So you've heard about the real estate, you've heard about the fee-for-services through what I did with the personal care option, developing that, products and services within your nonprofit. This morning when I talked about connecting with your city leaders, with your county leaders, with your state legislators, the best place to start looking at funding through grants is at local and state levels. A lot of folks have come to our trainings throughout the years, and they go on grants.gov, and it's federal, they're going to Department of Energy, and we had a scientist that had 70 patents and amazing renewable energy things for us. And he'd sent the most beautiful, well-written proposal you can imagine to DOE. DOE is like 20 blocks long, thousands of employees. If you don't follow a request for proposal or a NOFA, and folks just send them out, they're lost in the air. If you don't follow what the RP or NOFA says, or there's not even one, you just think you have the greatest idea and we're going to send it out. So when you're working with grant money, this was a great way I was able to launch my nonprofit. So that $100,000 seed money, I know most of you I've talked to have big visions. So now how do we come back to making sure we get that toehold and we start that first program and can grow up from there? We also have had people come to the training that get kind of paralyzed by being analyzed. So they're going to create this whole community development project, and they don't know where to start. And 5 years later, you go to some of these big conferences, and people are going to change the world, but 10 years later, they still got this plan. So let's talk about how do we start. So Ryan, if you want to come up and help me with this one. Ryan is the master, I know, with connecting. And the connecting is what leads to this, like with USDA, with Department of Housing and that kind of thing. So Ryan, tell them a little bit about how where the connecting led you into getting the grant money.
All right. Hello. I want to back up a second. A question that we had that someone asked me last night was, you guys are talking about seed money. What is that? So do you want to answer that? What is seed money? What's seed money? Yeah. So it looks like a lot of different. It takes a lot of different shapes and forms. But when we talk about seed money, it's simply just the first money you come in to help plant, to help grow the organization, and that could be from grants, donations, etc. So when it comes to actual grants, connecting is key. And as we talked about at lunch today, really for me and I know for Sherry, a big part of identifying the proper grants comes from connecting. When we talk about building the net, right, that we talked about yesterday, you've got to go out and identify what is not happening currently in your area. And that's typically where those gaps are, is also where you're going to find funding. It's where you're going to find the right funds. And so I was speaking to a gentleman last night about he has so many ideas, and I know so many of you guys sitting out there have so many ideas, to find a good place to start. And that's actually how I came up with how to do housing, right? I was sitting there just like you guys, right out of college. I knew I wanted to help, but and I had so many ideas, but until I went out and figured out what was the biggest need, that's really how I came up with housing. And then with housing, it led me straight to USDA. Okay, and so straight from USDA, I went and I sat down and I sat in their office every day for 6 months. And I just connected every single day, connected with them, brought them coffee, brought them donuts. And then when I wrote my grant, I drove to Albuquerque every day for 3 weeks, which is about a 3-hour drive. I drove there every day for 3 weeks to take my grant and move it from this desk to the next desk, and then maybe even educate them a little bit on how the process works. So connecting is critical. You can't, so many people think that they can do this from behind a computer screen and inside the comfort of their own little shell. And I'll tell you, people that are successful in writing grants and identifying grants, they get out. They pick up the phone and they call. And typically, I've never had a single grant rejected. And that's not because I'm an amazing grant writer. I'm actually not a good writer at all. But the people that I write the grants to, they know who I am, and they know what we're doing before my grant even comes.
Yep. And let's ask group, how many of you would think that USDA is the biggest funding of housing? I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. When we talk about connecting, now we need to talk about the agencies you want to connect with. When our first trainings, when we talk about USDA, people would be like, well, they just do the stamp on meat or, all that kind of stuff. Agriculture, right? USDA, one of the largest, not the largest mortgage holder in the United States.
Yeah, it's called USDA Rural Development, and a lot of big municipalities, big cities, you don't hear a lot about USDA Rural Development, obviously, but the communities surrounding those big cities, typically USDA Rural Development is a really large source of funds, and the reality of it is, like when Ed was talking yesterday, I told him, I said, hey, Ed, watch this. You're going to really enjoy this call. And when we called USDA and started talking to them about what it is that we're doing, they were refreshed because they hadn't gotten a call in a year, and then maybe had 2 applications in the last 2 years. The funding is there, but it's just very few people, number one, know about it, number two, are willing to make that phone call.
And if they don't spend the money, it gets sent back to the feds, and they don't get as much next year. And they do not want to be on the front page of the paper saying, oh, we turned back $10 million, even though we have a lack of affordable housing. And so when we were in New Jersey with the mentoring student and went to USDA, it was the 1st of September. Talk about happy to see us. They had $2 million still left that nobody had applied for, and they wanted to allocate it before the end of the federal fiscal year, which was September 30th. So they're an amazing resource. About all the federal agencies I've worked with, USDA is one of my favorites. They're very accessible. The local USDA offices don't sometimes know what's going on with the state initiatives. So your state USDA. When I took Ed on a connecting visit, and we went to USDA, and he was first with us, and I was telling him what a great group they are. We went to the one in Phoenix for the state of Arizona, and he had 3 or 4 of his staff ready for us, and at a conference table, and then he handed out these books, and he sat there for an hour and a half. We were there 2 hours, hour and a half, and went through every single funding. Okay, now this funds mixed-use development, and this is pretty competitive. But this one funds more of rural areas for emergency rooms and clinics and that, and nobody's applying for that. Now so he actually even went through which ones would not be good, a waste of our time, and which ones would be accessible. So connecting is going to lead you to the blueprint of grant money.
Absolutely.
So, and people have been asking me, well, but what do you do with grant money? Well, we're going to show you step by step the RFP and the process. I go at it backwards, and a lot of folks do, is looking at your budget first. Close your eyes, envision what you want it to look like. Are you setting up wellness centers? Are you setting up a veteran center? Are you going to set, okay, I want a place, 5,000 square feet. They walk in, there's somebody to welcome them. We have 3 specialists that do independent living skills training. Think through how many people, how much space, what you want, and then start thinking about a budget. How many square feet, how many people you're going to hire, all those things. So I just put up some of this that you could be thinking about: the building, the renovation plans, your capital support. A lot of the funding's not a lot, but some, I think I was talking to someone today, that found $1 million funding that was going to be given, that they said was accessible. They needed matching funds. And when you see a grant that needs matching funds, a lot of times it's not just cash. You don't have to come up with $100,000 to match it. It can be in kind. You can include your hours you spent, in-kind wages, building that's been donated. That's what I always did for in-kind.
Yeah, services, any kind of services can be counted as in-kind as well.
And then conferences, seminars. You know, I always wrote in my budget a training line item, training and education. I wanted my team to be the ones that walk the walk. And so I wanted them to be able to go to our national conferences and the National HUD Conference and NeighborWorks, so that they would have the resources, tools to come home and make a difference with the folks we were serving.
And just to piggyback off what you said, Sherry, earlier about closing your eyes, and this is, you know, we were essentially separated at birth, the way we think and just the way that we operated our companies. But to piggyback off of what she said, you know, successful people have vivid visualization, okay? And so we're going to build off what we talked about yesterday, because I know that a majority of you guys sitting in here, when it comes to funding, when it comes to your programs, when it comes to starting to structure your business, it's like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what grants to go for. I don't know what funding streams there are even out there. And so in a real practical sense, I want us to keep this in a real practical level of thinking. And so what I challenge you guys to do is when you start to think about your programs and when you start to have that vivid visualization, I want you guys to dream big, but I also want you to keep in mind the first thing that Sherry and I think about when you tell us about your programs is, how does the money flow through that program? Okay, how does the money come in and how does the money go out? Okay, and so I want you guys to take that context when you're thinking about that, and then also, you guys aren't reinventing the wheel for the most part. Okay, there's another model out there that's similar, or there's somebody else doing it. Okay, the first thing that I did, because it's like, oh, I want to do single-family housing, right? I'm not a genius, and I didn't think about, you know, oh, I need to go. The first thought is I got to go to USDA. No, I didn't even know USDA wrote mortgages, okay? But I picked up the phone, and I called somebody else who knew, and they taught me, these are the programs that you want to look at. So as you guys are building the foundation of you know, because I'm not a mind reader, but I could probably tell you most of you guys sitting out there now are going, well, how do we even know what grants to go for? Well, the reality of it is, pick up the phone. Don't reinvent the wheel. Call somebody who has a program or a model that's similar to yours. what I did was I went and spent 8 hours with a program that was at the southern part of our state. And they gave me their budgets. They gave me the grants that they applied for. They gave me job descriptions. Okay, so get outside of your bubble. Don't apologize for where you're at in the process. This isn't the competitive for-profit world where no one's willing to share. People in this business share. If someone were to call you today and say, hey, you ran a successful Center for Independence, can I pick your brain for a second? You would love it. So would I, about housing. So don't be afraid to reach out, to call, and to grow your understanding of the grants in that way, of where to start.
Yeah, and you hit on something really important too. In the nonprofit world, it's all about collaboration. In the for-profit world, it's competition. That's the beautiful part of the nonprofit world. Getting with other nonprofits. And I'm going to bring up Julie later, talking to Julie. Julie is one of our mentoring students who has 11 houses now that have been donated. She provides the housing for people coming out of prison, people coming out of homeless shelters, The homeless shelter has a 2-year follow-up program with the financial literacy. So she's collaborating with other nonprofits so she can stay focused and do what she does best and then collaborate to bring the support services in with the people. So we'll talk more about that, Julie. But that's the collaboration. And the number one, I think the number one thing real estate investors tell us with their real estate investing, their for-profit hat on, it's a very different conversation and result than when they go in with their nonprofit hat on, okay? So take that, and when we look at the in-kind matching money, when you're talking about think big, but we got to get started. Let me give you a really good insider tip. This last nonprofit I started that's multi-millions a year now, when we started, we didn't have any funding. We didn't have any money at all, but we had a purpose, and we believed and we were going to do it. So we got a donated office to start, and instead of go to a strip mall or in the very back or the human services department or, all those, we got an office at the Economic Development Corporation, Economic Development Agency. People viewed us not as now that little bake sale charity. We were going to be creating jobs. We got a front page article in the paper. New nonprofit comes and is in the Economic Development Agency. So when you leave here, be thinking about putting yourself image-wise and branding yourself with a group that are the movers and shakers and that are in the business world. Because, Ryan, it changed the dynamics. And then when we had business leaders coming in, and I'm not kidding, we got the office 2 days a week. It was me and Elizabeth. We came in 2 hours on Tuesday and Thursday. We had that one phone, and that was our office. But it gave us a place to start that momentum. So you can leave now and have that office and get that going.
Yeah, and if you guys don't think a nonprofit has an impact on economic development, you're wrong, and it's quite the opposite. It has such a profound impact on economic development, and that's one of the things that I believe this beautiful lady sitting next to me was a genius.
Say that again, what? I just want the
this
recording.
Amazingly beautiful,
Okay, that's
sexy
better.
woman
Oh, that's even
next to me.
better. Okay, we're getting better.
What she did really well was she understood what motivated the people that she was talking to, what motivated them. And so when she spoke to people, she showed them the numbers, the economic impact that our service is going to provide this community. And so make sure when you guys leave here that you think about it from an economic development standpoint, because That's how she got money from the state. That's how she got bigger money from our local community, is because she was able to paint a picture for them to say, look, these are the real numbers. This is what we are saving you. These are what we're saving the taxpayers by doing it this way. And so really keep in mind that element when you're looking at your organization, when you're seeking to grow, and when you're looking for that state or local grant money.
So these are just some of the things you're gonna see in the RFP or the NOFA. Looking at they'll fund conferences or fund continuing support and employee matching gifts, fellowships, matching funds, program development. Okay, so you'll just see different things in the RFP. What I want to right up front let you know, when everybody's got this glaze over their eyes going, oh my gosh, I'm not a good writer. I was known as the queen of cut and paste, and I am so proud of that title, okay? Ryan, you can attest, they write the proposal for you. All you have to do is fill in the blanks. They say, we want a center that serves people with disabilities. We are going to provide a center that serves people with disabilities. Yeah. I mean, they write the proposal for you. And so you just cut and paste, put your name in there, and make it pop. For many, many years when I first started and learned the hard way, most everything, I didn't have a Ryan as a mentor. I didn't have folks that would walk me through it. So I would go to these grant writing classes. I would try learning stuff. When I really learned is years later when I got brought in by the federal government to be a grant reviewer. And we'd have a room full of people like this. And they'd do the orientation for us, whether it was Treasury or HUD or Department Ed. And they'd say, okay, here's the parameters. And they'd split us up in teams. There'd be 8 of us. We would take off for 3 days. They'd put us up in we had little suites. And I'd be with a researcher, a medical doctor, a practitioner, a PhD. They brought in all different disciplines for us to look at the grant. So it was very interesting to go through 50 different proposals from universities, from hospitals, from nonprofits. And after a while, the technical writing, the big universities, the big hospitals, the technical writing got to be blah, 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 blah. You know? According to this, blah, 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 blah. And this research shows blah, 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 right? When we would get a proposal from a nonprofit that said, I'm going to serve 50 people coming out of prison, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to reunite them with their families, and we're going to do a family support system, and we're going to work with the kids whose parents are incarcerated. It was like, I want more of that, okay? So don't get hung up on the technical writing, because as a grant reviewer, it's really not.
Yeah, no, I would say
it's not fun.
Write this down, okay? This is the golden nugget for a successful grant proposal, okay? You guys ready? Hope you guys are ready to write. Okay. Where you're going and how you're going to get there. Okay? If you can tell a story, a simple story of where you're going and how you're going to get there. And we're going to talk about business models tomorrow. It's got to make sense. Sherry said your budget has to make sense, and it has to make sense for the rest of your organization. What she hit on was so profound. What most people would spend 20 pages on their grant proposal, mine would be 5. Okay, but I didn't cut and paste a bunch of wiki or whatever, I didn't cut and paste a bunch of silly statistics that didn't matter. Okay, when someone said, hey, there's a homeless problem in my area, I said, okay, great. Sherry and I sat through really more than we should have, silly homeless consortium meetings with a bunch of whiners. And we showed up in there and we're like, why are you guys complaining? They just whined about the fact they didn't have any money, and we're like, why don't you guys just shut up and do something? You know, and we asked a question, and this is literally how easy it is, guys, if you just stop and do, right? Stop thinking, stop talking, and start doing. I asked a question, I said, how many beds do we have in our community for the homeless? You know what I got? Nothing. I got crickets. I said, well, that's interesting. This is the room. These are the homeless providers for our community. The next question I asked, I said, well, what's the need? How many people are turned away every night? So within 1 hour, I said, this is ridiculous. And so in 1 hour, I called every single homeless shelter we had in town, which is only 10. Okay? Hey, I got a question. How many beds you got? Oh, we got 8. Oh, we got 12. Oh, we got 20. Okay, we had 80 beds. Okay? And then I asked them the very next question, how many people do you turn away every day? Well, come to find out, we turned away 200 people every night. Okay? Now, imagine if you're reviewing a grant. Okay? And you saw that very sentence. It took me an hour to come up with this number. Okay? Excuse me, sir.
Get up here and sing.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
I'm just kidding. Oh, man.
Got to add a little fun here. Come on.
Speaking of fun, are you guys awake? Okay, well, let's just take about, can I have 45 seconds just to put a smile on your face? All right.
Uh-oh.
So last night we had a wonderful meal at the social, and if you know me, you know that I'm straight. I mean, just no fun. Okay.
No.
And
never.
we had a
Never.
lively table, and we were starving, so we're stuffing our face, and this beautiful lady comes and stands next to us, and she says, and I said, okay, here are the ground rules for this table. I said, there's no smiling, no laughing, no fun. All right? As long as you're good with that, you can stay here. She goes, oh, I am totally good with that. She says, you will not believe this. She says, yesterday, or the other day, I was moving, and I ran into a glass door and knocked my tooth out. So she said, and this is a true story. This is a true story. So yeah. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. Yeah. So later we're gonna have a smiling contest. All right. That's right. Okay. Sorry, I'm ADD, so I will stop right mid thought and I will go, hey, look, a chicken. It's after lunch, so I got to pump the blood a little bit and bust out the Legos for the ADD guys. So the reality was this, okay? That's the need. That's the real need. That's not 2012 census data. That's real, tangible need, okay? And you know what? You write that in one sentence, that beats 14 paragraphs of garbage, okay? What's the need? 80 beds, 200 turned away every night. Yep. Simple. Okay? That's simple and yet profound. Okay? And then we went to these same 10 knuckleheads that were whining about it, said, why don't you guys, instead of fighting over $100,000 in funding, why don't you guys apply together for $1 million?
Let's do a joint proposal.
Yeah. So as a community, right, as a collaborative, guess what? They apply together. We called up our friends at HUD in Albuquerque, said, oh, by the way, and this wasn't even homelessness wasn't even our field, but literally in 30 minutes we solved their problem, and it was just changing the way you think. And so what she's saying is so profound, and what I tell people is go get the numbers yourself. Pick up the dadgum phone. Don't be afraid to go get the numbers yourself. It's hard to find those numbers, right? If you're gonna just sit behind a computer screen. You want the numbers, go get them.
And you know what we did with one of our mentoring students, she'd been talking to the county housing director for the female veterans, and they were being turned away left and right, and so we put the quote, put the quote from the county housing director. According to the county housing director, and that came out in the newspaper, so we pasted that right into the proposal. So it doesn't have to be, you don't want to get hung up in all the blah, blah, blah stuff, okay? And a good exercise for you start next week, go find some RFP and NOFAs, okay? And you're not going to find them on websites. You're not, the federal ones, and the federal ones are not a good way to start for you guys. So many people, 5 years later, are so frustrated they've never gotten a grant. They've only been applying for the federal funding. You've got to develop a track record. And the federal funding is much more competitive. Get connected with that state USDA, your state housing agency. The state housing agencies, he's governor appointed to our state housing agency. Talk about the multitude revenue streams they have from the federal level from HUD. We've also, as advocates, gone in, and in New Mexico, we developed a state housing trust fund. We have state tax credits. All of that is within your state housing. So it doesn't matter if you're working with kids with autism, if you're working with veterans, if you're working with affordable housing, all of you guys are going to be involved in real estate. Like Derek said, you're all in real estate now. Whether it's getting the gifts of real estate to get you money to get it going, or whether it's that property that's going to help build that research and training center for the amazing things you guys are doing. Think about connecting with them. And when you get the RP or NOPA, so you're calling the city, you're calling the county, you're calling USDA, you get it and it's this thick, that's where people go, oh my gosh. But out of this thick, out of 50 pages, 45 pages are legalese that go into every single RFP and contract that the state does. Okay? It's that 5 pages up front that's really how you're going to write your proposal. So don't let that scare you away. It's boilerplate. A lot of times they'll put in a sample contract for the people that get the grant, so it makes it 150 pages, and that scares people. It's really not anything you're going to deal with right now. It's just bureaucracy loves paperwork, okay? You guys know that. Well, in this world, they love it even more, okay? So let's go over some insider secrets. Now you have the RP, now you have the NOPA. You've collaborated, you've talked to other nonprofits. When I have a nonprofit in Texas say, hey, how'd you get that employment training center? Let me send you my proposal. We worked with vocational rehab, Department of Ed. Let me just send you what we wrote. And at the same time, I'd be calling New York and saying, hey, I love that community bank program you did. Can you send me your proposal? So sharing those.
I was just about to ask if we've said NOFA, RFP, and there's a new one now called NOSA. I got the other day.
Oh, I haven't seen it. And there's a RFQ. Have you seen that?
Not seen that.
The RFQ is request for inquiry. It's kind of like NOFA is notice of funding availability. Most of your federal grants come out as NOFAs. In California, when we were in Temecula a while back, the county economic development agency was putting out NOFAs. So sometimes at the local level, they'll be called NOFAs. That's same thing as the RFP. It's just a different name.
Yeah, and then the new one from USDA now is called a NOSA, which is Notice of Solicitation of Applications, and it's a way that it's an interesting. It gets them out of a liability the way that how they frame it, but it's
cool.
That's hot off the presses.
And it probably took the deputy dogs and their teams about a month to come up with NOSA. So just so you guys know, our money
$2
is well
billion
spent.
in attorney's fees.
Our money is very well spent.